Games 98. On this episode, it's Panzer Dragoon Saga versus Half-Life.
Welcome to another episode of Region Free Gamers. I am Anthony Arriaga. Joining me on the mics today, a man who doesn't just do it, he's doing it right now, Mr. Geoff Ivets.
Sup?
And the other part of this Rican takeover, newly minted Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, Arnaldo Perez.
Let's go Bucs, baby.
Here we are, people, the Elite Eight of the Battle of 98, man. We're down to the final 8.
I feel like some of the pressure's been taken off now. Like, I feel so much more calm about this round, even though arguably there are higher stakes now.
Yeah, I guess you could say that you could say that everyone's a winner from this point on, right? So
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Like, I feel like the farther these games go, the less I'll get yelled at, even though I'm 100% sure that's not correct.
That is true, and I've embraced the whole I don't know what I'm gonna pick thing.
Yeah.
Before we start recording, you know, like
you've embraced the chaos.
Yes,
the chaos is now part of you,
right? And how we look at, like, I know, like, if you know, it's what are we, like, week 4 in quarantine right now, basically?
Oh, well, it depends who you talk to, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you people could see me, man, I look like I'm on that island with Tom Hanks in Castaway right now. I just don't care about life, man. My beard is just ridiculous.
You're gonna emerge like Robin Williams in Jumanji.
You know what? That's a perfect way to put it, man. That's a perfect way to put it. Oh, man, but we're really excited today. We're doing, it's Half-Life versus Panzer Dragoon Saga.
That's
and
right.
We're really on the fence on this one, man. I really don't know, but I'm looking forward to getting into some hot topics right now with these games. But before we get started, though, before we get to this next battle, I want to thank everyone for listening, taking part in these battle episodes. Especially, we've had some brackets being filled, we've had some brackets being busted, Arnie. But we can't thank you guys enough for the support. And honestly, man, it may not sound like a big deal, but please leave us a review, leave us a rating, spread the word about us. It helps. It helps us get a larger audience. The website is building a lot of traction, so there's definitely something to check out. There's a lot of complimentary write-ups to a lot of these episodes and whatnot. And, you know, big shout out to Ozzy for putting a lot of those together, man. Our research guru. And it's just us three today. Paul's probably making pancakes right now.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment.
Oh, no, wait, it's not dinner time. Never mind.
That's right. He only eats breakfast at dinner. I don't know, man. It's weird. It's like, I think this battle more than anything, like, makes me realize what kind of a year 1998 was, where, like, Half-Life could come out and Panzer Dragoon Saga could come out.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and it's funny because I'm looking at Panzer Dragoon Saga, just doing my research, you know, and it's not even the only role playing game that came out that you forget that same year we have other games that are on this battle tournament that came out that year, you know, so it's wild, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then I remember the one thing I remember being like really excited about when we set this whole thing up was that when the first 16 games were chosen, I was like, oh, there's a good amount of like PC stuff on here. And we don't really get to talk about PC stuff a whole lot.
Right.
So I was really excited to do that. And then I think with the exception of Half-Life and Grim Fandango, there is like no PC games left now.
Grim Fandango. You really love that one, don't you?
I sure do. I sure do.
But that's what's been great about the battle episodes, is that you really don't know what's going to happen.
No.
You don't know. So why don't we just get started, man? Let's get right into this, man.
Yeah.
While we got that momentum. In the last round, Half-Life went against Unreal. That was probably the most even battle, right? Like, same genre, same year. It was probably the most even. And
yeah, it was probably like the one that actually made sense.
Right. Once in a while, we get lucky, man. But I know, Arnie, you mentioned that you were too young at the time when the game came out, so you were really just immersed in the Half-Life meme culture at the time, which is great. I love hearing that. But Geoff, what was your initial, without giving any spoilers away in the rest of the episode, what was your initial take or thoughts on Half-Life?
So Half-Life, PC gaming for me as well was not really on my radar. In 98, my dad decided to upgrade our home PC. And it was at that moment that I realized, actually, we've got a PC capable of playing some of these games now. And I think it was maybe a year later, because I picked up Half-Life, the Game of the Year edition, which came with Counter-Strike and Team Fortress. And I think the first expansion pack, which I'm trying to remember the name of. But yeah, it was, my first impressions were like, it was so unexpected. I hadn't played an FPS like this before, and it completely pulled me in. I thought it was utterly fantastic. I think I spent about 3 weeks non-stop, 3 weeks non-stop playing Team Fortress. Really got into that. It was an amazing package, that Game of the Year edition. Yeah,
we're gonna get into it, but there's a lot to unpack there with Half-Life, man. And when it was released, it's really amazing to look back on 98. I just get the chills right now. Like, ooh. Now, the other game in the ring today is something completely unrelated to what Half-Life is about. It's a Saturn holy grail of sorts, Panzer Dragoon Saga, which took down the weaker dragon. Well, is it a dragoon or a dragon? I don't know, man. It took down something. It took down Spyro in the last round. So a lot to live up to.
I'm
but
sure that people are playing the world's smallest violin right about now.
Oh God, please, man! I don't even want to hear about it.
Just don't tell the PlayStation gamers on Instagram. They will cry if you say Spyro's not good.
No, man.
Yep.
Oh God, they went 8 nuts for that game last year when it came out. We'll get into that later, though. We could trash Spyro later. Anyway, but Arnie, what was like your awareness of Panzer Dragoon Saga? Like, like what's your take on it? Like, you haven't really played it, right? We just
like most people, I think I owned a Saturn and I played Panzer Dragoon Saga religiously. My dad worked for Sega. No, I'm just kidding. Nobody played this. I didn't play it. Paul is probably one of the few people I know that's like, I owned a Saturn as a kid. Like Sega Saturn was not a console that I knew existed until my early adult life. So no, I mean, I think like as much as I know about Saga, it's really just in like hushed tones as people like, like bask in its glow and aura as being like this amazing grail and this like beyond amazing RPG that came out in 1998. Like I mean, I've never been within 50 feet of the actual game itself, except maybe when I was in your apartment, I think.
Yeah, I think that was the closest.
Yeah, but aside from that, no, I mean, I have very limited experience with Saga. I've delved into it, like I've done my YouTube stuff and I've watched people play it and stuff like that. But Saga is it's a mystery wrapped in an enigma for me.
Yeah. It's a game that I have and I don't even like looking at it directly. It's just too much.
You'll break the Saturn case if you stare at it too much.
But this is gonna be fun because, like I said, man, I don't know. I had a quick conversation with Arnie yesterday, and I thought I was gonna be leaning one way or the other. Then, the more I started getting into this research, I just realized I have no idea what's happening. Just like the rest of my life, just like the rest of my days, I have no idea. But we're gonna be judging these games based on 4 criteria. The first being personal attachment, second being critical reception, a third is legacy and genre defining, and the fourth one is when they finally go head to head, which one do we decide that we're going to pick at the end. Also, let it be known, these 4 criteria mean nothing to us. We're just going to pick whatever we want to pick. But this gives us a way of kind of like filtering out, like, trying to talk us. This is therapy for a lot of us, we
got to talk through these. We got to
talk through these things. We're gonna have each other draw puzzles and figure this out together, man. So, I guess we'll get started with Half-Life first. I guess that's right. So Half-Life,
good place as any.
Yeah. So, and I'm gonna be trying to focus on the PC version. I know even me personally, I didn't really play this game until it came out on the PS2, but I'm using that with the PC footage I've seen to kind of get a good sense of the game, and not expansion packs, nothing, just the initial 98 release of Half-Life. I know a lot of stuff we went over on the last episode, but just a quick synopsis. It was released here in November of 1998, in North America, I should say. Publisher Sierra Studio, developer, you might have heard of them, Valve. It got a Metacritic of 96, right? About 96.
Yeah, 96 out of 100.
Yeah.
One of the higher ones on the site.
Crazy. And lifetime sales as of now, it's well over 10 million copies sold worldwide. PC though. We get into that other stuff, but PC, we already know. We already know what it took to sell that many PC games back in the day. So quite an accomplishment to be at 10 million right now.
Absolutely.
And this game features one of my favorite Gordons of all time. There's Gordon Shumway, or as you know him, Alf, and there's Gordon Freeman. Gordon Freeman is probably one of the most iconic faces in video games that you'll ever see in your life. Gordon
Freeman made me be okay with having to wear glasses for the rest of my life. That's about the biggest compliment I can give that man.
That's great, man. That's great. And it's funny because when you think of Half-Life, obviously you think of you could, even if you've never played the game, you could see the logo in your head. You could just see it, but it's always Gordon, his specs, and a crowbar. Yep. I think those things go hand in hand together. So basically the story of, typical sci-fi stuff. Gordon's a physicist. Typical physicist arriving at work late like they always do. During an experiment, things go wrong. A portal's open to another dimension. And we all know that portals to other dimensions are never a good thing. I've never heard a situation where a portal's open and everybody's like, yes, we're here now. This is great.
Even in Narnia, they started like a war and shit.
Nothing ever good happens from a portal. I guess at the time, arguably the pinnacle of shooters at the time. I think definitely one of the most popular. I mean, it's so crazy because this is a time when FPS is, especially on PC, like you've got so many titles. You've got Quake, you've got Doom, you've got Unreal, and Half-Life somehow manages to like stand above the fray. Right.
Like, I don't think you can directly compare it to a lot of, like, I don't think you could arguably say like it's better than this or it's better than that. Right. But it's definitely like one that if you say it, people know what it is. People know what you're talking about immediately, like can recognize it. Like you said, Gordon Freeman is like the PC like character.
Yeah, he's not like this hulking dude. He's not carrying around 2 machine guns, one on each arm. He's just, this guy.
Yeah.
Who
the one thing I will say real quickly, I was playing this on the PS2 the other day to like get a sense of it, and they had that intro, that long, real cinematic intro. I think one of the best intros in video gaming. Like it's really not like, all pew pew shooty explosions, like you're just riding a tram to work. But it's like so much setup. You can look out the windows and like see the workings of like the Black Mesa facility. Yeah. See like basically giving you a ride through like this is what you have to go through to like eventually escape. And I think the thing that I was most upset by in that whole intro is the fact that Gordon Freeman is apparently 27 years old. Because I'm now 28 and I feel so unaccomplished in comparison. But no, that intro really kicks off like. It really sets the stage for like an amazing game, like right out the gate.
The way it builds the atmosphere and the exposition for that start, I think that's what captivated me the first, when I first played it. You were just so used to like level starts. Here's a gun, shoot. That's all we were doing. That's all any of us were doing in shooter games. And I remember that opening being a 15-year-old super frustrated, like why am I confined to this this little box? Okay, you get out. Okay, now where's the gun? I was really not expecting that sort of slow paced build up. And when it I'm probably going too far ahead now. But then when it all kicks off, I actually thought to myself, I've done something wrong. I've done something wrong because things aren't going right. It was only after, like, when I start realizing this isn't the game being broken. This is what the game is. It felt so real that, like, something is wrong here. It did such a good job. I was such an idiot. Oh, I think I've already said it on another battle episode. I was thick. And the more games we talk about, the more I realise how thick I was. So yeah, that was always my first experience with Half-Life, that opening.
Yeah.
But Arnie, yeah, man, that's a good point, man. That intro, I feel the tension already building up. And you're not even doing anything. And I think that's where Valve did an exceptional job just from the start, building that atmosphere, you know. And this is one of the things they wanted to do. They wanted to be this immersive. They wanted this to be this very immersive game in the environment. And they succeeded, like, off the jump, right there on the tram.
No, they did a really good job. As far as personal attachment, which I know is, like, our first sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, Half-Life was a game that, like, a lot of these, because 98, like, I think back to 98, I'm 6 years old, right? Like, I'm not exactly like MLG pro gamer here, like, playing Half-Life and Panzer Dragoon Saga. So a lot of these games I came to later in life, and Half-Life was one of those that, you know, I've played so many, I don't know if this has ever happened to you guys, but I've played so many games that because I'm younger, I didn't play when I was a kid, and they're real hype, and people are just like, this game is great, you know, it's so amazing because of this, and that. And then I play it as an adult with all of that bias, obviously, and all of that hindsight, and I'm just like, it doesn't do it for me, right? But Half-Life is not that. Like, there are obviously, like, frustrations, like, some of the controls are a little finicky, and some of the, like, setup, some of the puzzles are a little annoying. But for the most part, as far as, like, being that cinematic experience and being, like, a game that I'm really puts me in that world, like, right away, I thought it did an excellent job. So no personal attachment, like from it being a childhood game, but definitely one that I think holds the test of time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the thing with Half-Life is that it really doesn't reinvent much in terms of gameplay, in terms of mechanics, but it really just polished up a lot of the stuff that was out there already. Mm-hmm. And it's a game that's it's really a sum of its parts. And I think that's what makes it hold, because even this is 98, even in 98, and I know you alluded to earlier, first person shooters, there was so many out there already. It was already a flooded market, you know? So for this game to kind of not be the technical the technical marvel that other games might have been, but just to take those elements of each of those games and really polish them, it really, especially for Valve, and mind you, Valve was this was their first game, right? This was like, they were like basically a startup company, so this was their first game.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, if we were to replace and say Half-Life 2, I think we'd have a clear winner. That was when Valve really started to be that incredible developer that they were always destined to be. But the first game, I've had to go back and watch through the videos to kind of remind myself just of that, especially the opening hour, because it's quite, as I said before, very atmospheric, really big suspenseful build up, where you only have a crowbar and you're wondering how am I going to get through all of this, where you see scientists being picked off one by one. What I remember really liking was just the way that it allowed for true freedom for you to watch what was going on. And like Arnie mentioned at the beginning with the tram sequence, you know, you're seeing and you're feeling the everyday life going on at Black Mesa. And you think stuff is happening beyond just my world. This is like an alive environment. This is the first time in an FPS for me that I'm actually in what feels like, or what they're trying to make you feel like, is a real location. And then when you see you can watch a doctor or a scientist, whatever, get pulled into an air duct, and you're not forced to watch that. You're not forced to. You can turn around and do something else. It was really very rare. I mean, one of my favorite games, which is on this battle as well. So I'm not going to drop any names because it will allude to my allegiance when it comes to the later rounds. But you're forced to watch the sequences because those are integral to the storytelling. Whereas this was the storytelling is there, it's strong. You're this silent protagonist, so you're a incredibly intelligent 27-year-old who also can't speak, which is he's like a mute scientist. It's very, what a guy!
Classic 90s.
But the way it told a story without your character speaking through everything else, it was a really phenomenal and groundbreaking addition to the FPS. If nothing else it was doing was particularly exceptional, it was all quite good. But to me, that's where the game really excelled above the Quake and the Unreals and what have you.
Right. Yeah, because everything else was just so run and gun. This made you slow down a little bit and think. And I think that's what makes Half-Life stand the test of time right now, like just even now.
Yeah. There is a story that's worth being told there. And I think to Geoff's point, I don't know if I talked about this with last round when I talked about Half-Life, but the fact that they use in-engine cutscenes, like they never cut away to show you specific things or do something like that, really adds to that feeling of immersion because it never breaks with that format. Like it never jump cuts to something completely different, and it never forces you to look at anything. And even the way the levels are sort of all interconnected, it all feels like one giant world.
Exactly.
Like it feels like you feel like Black Mesa is like this maze of like corridors and crazy, like a research facility, quote unquote.
Absolutely.
And it's definitely left a legacy, right? I mean, wouldn't you guys agree?
I mean, it's, for me, it's weird, right? Because obviously, like, Half-Life is, like, an incredible game that had an even more incredible sequel. But I feel like at this point, it's weird because I feel like the hype for the third game has now sort of taken over what was the actual series. Like, I feel like more people know Half-Life by memeing, like, Half-Life 3, never gonna happen, than, like, have actually played through the game and, like, know what it is. And then I also think that, I think Geoff may have alluded to this earlier, we see that a lot of, like, the mods for Half-Life also became really big, huge games, like Team Fortress and Counter-Strike and all that stuff.
Right.
So it's really hard for me sometimes to, like, pin down the legacy of Half-Life, the first game on its own.
Yeah.
But obviously, there is a legacy there. It's just really hard at this point for me to sort of suss out how much of it is memes, how much of it is people actually enjoying the game.
I guess you could lay it at its feet like their narrative driven FPS games. I guess when you look at I'm just now going to try and think off the top of my head for other FPSs that are like this. But if you say like a Halo, that was very storyline driven and it kind of really, even like your characters does speak, Master Chief. But I do think that Half-Life probably would have inspired quite a lot of programmers to go, what can we do with this engine? And now when you see video games today, most of them are done by we've got an Unreal Engine behind them or something like that, and it's only through developers like Valve who show how to do something slightly different with a genre that we all know that inspires so many people. So I think, because this is me trying to step away from the meme side because it is funny. But I do think that there's it's played a big part in where we see a lot of games today. Unfortunately, during that PS3 360 era, we got too many FPSs and too many shooters, in my opinion. Right. But that's the way it goes sometimes. You do get heavy, like the 16-bit era was amazing for JRPGs, so you're always going to get these things happen.
Yeah, I think the thing with Half-Life is that and even just going back and watching it and playing some of it, I've been really good at disconnecting and playing it as a game for the first time in '98, but knowing everything that's come after that, it's still pretty remarkable to like step into that world in a '98 graphics and still feel like that tension from the beginning. I think to me that says a lot about the game alone, because especially nowadays, I mean, our attention spans are nothing. So like for Half-Life, for me to put on Half-Life and start playing it and it draw me in within those first few minutes, I think that says a lot. It really tells you a lot about what they were trying to aim for in that game.
Yeah, I mean, we recently just had the announcement of Half-Life, what's Alex, I think, the new VR game that they're going to do, and that blew up. So clearly there's still people out there who crave more Half-Life.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Half-Life, there's only been I guess you can call it a series now, right? Now that there's 3 games.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So up until just recently, there's only been 2 Half-Life games, and this one started it all. We're going to look back and we're going to be like, this is the one that started it all.
Yeah. I think if we're looking at legacy specifically as like being remembered and having an influence, undoubted, like Half-Life, huge.
For sure. So let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll start talking about Panzer Dragoon Saga. Welcome back, guys. So we just spent some time talking about Half-Life, and now it's time to talk about the other game in the ring, Panzer Dragoon Saga. So a quick recap of that one as well. Obviously, platformer. I mean, the platform it was released for was Sega Saturn. Boom, right? That would have been like a culture shock. Like, wait, it's a platformer? What the hell?
Wait a
second. Released in North America, April 30th, 1998. Published by Sega, developed by Team Andromeda. This one's got like a gaming rank of about 92. If you look at any of the websites, any of the publications, it's up there, man. Everything's in the 9s.
9s and 10s, baby.
Yeah, and in terms of like Metacritic reception, crazy. The Sega Saturn magazine gave it a 96, which is kind of messed up. So at least giving it 100,
I mean, it is the holy grail of your system.
Yeah, true. Right. Give me 100, man. Lifetime sales. I mean, come on, let's have a chuckle at that one. Lifetime sales. 3 people.
It is what it is.
Yeah, that one, we just can't even talk about that one when it comes to this game. But the Sega Saturn. So if you know me, you know that the Sega Saturn is probably one of my favorite systems for 2D fighting. And as I was doing some research on this, man, it just brought a little tear to my eye to think of the Saturn starting off with Panzer Dragoon and ending with Panzer Dragoon Saga. Little bookend there, But Panzer Dragoon, man, it's a game everyone talks about. If you have played, and a lot of people swear they got the game cheap at a thrift shop, which is
that is true. Yeah, that and Earthbound are the classic.
Yeah, look what I found at a garage sale. Like, get out of here, man.
Oh god.
In a way, Panzer Dragoon, the original one, signaled like the start of the 32-bit era of shooters, and Panzer Dragoon Saga just ended the 32-bit Saturn Sega life cycle altogether. It's the 3rd game in the series, but it's actually a direct sequel to the first Panzer Dragoon game. So this takes place right after the first Panzer Dragoon game. Panzer Dragoon's Way is actually a prequel.
Yep.
My mind busted too when I found that out. I was like, what?
I know, I did not know that.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about it, man. This was a game that it really, I mean, it was an impressive landmark for the Saturn. I'm just trying to figure out the right words to talk about this game with,
This game is like, to me at least, this game is like a dark cloud over this entire tournament because it's like I don't know what to do with you. Like, I understand, like, critically praised, super fun, like ahead of its time, revolutionary, holy grail, all these things.
Right.
But like people didn't play it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you can't even play it right now. Like, apparently the original source code was lost, so the only way you're ever gonna play this thing is if you're willing to shell out big bucks for it, or you can run it on an emulator, which apparently Saturn emulation is horrendous.
Oh, you got to do the swapping of the disc and everything, like something crazy, man.
Yeah, so it's really weird. I don't know where to put this game at, and I'm a big JRPG guy, so I would love to play this game. And everything I've seen, from like the combat mechanics to the 3D world that they designed for it, the story, everything like that, looks really impressive.
Yeah,
but in terms of like the best game of 1998. For me, at least, and I know this isn't necessarily like an objective sort of metric, but it's like, if nobody was able to play it, I don't know if I can say in good conscience that it is like the best. You know what I mean?
So that's the end of the episode, right? No one played it. Move on.
No, thanks for listening, guys.
Because it's still got flying dragons and it's super cool, and I want to see it. Like, this is the dark horse of this tournament. I think, like, this is the game that I think if you ask most people, they would be like, I don't like. Let me put it this way: if you were like, "What's the best game of 1998?" I don't think many people would say Panzer Dragoon Saga, but if you asked a lot of people, like, between Panzer Dragoon Saga and Half-Life, which one would you rather play? Most people would say Panzer Dragoon Saga.
Because they've never played
it. Because it's like they've never played it. It's super rare. It looks really cool. Like, I think there's an allure to this game that makes people drawn to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, look, there's a few games on this tournament that we haven't really had a chance to play fully. So it's really just about doing just going back and talking about this. Is what we're here for, Arnie. We're here to talk this through, man. Okay?
Help me, Anthony.
Get off the ledge. Come back inside. Let's talk about this.
So,
But Geoff, what was your, when were you exposed in some way to Panzer Dragoon, or what was your initial reaction to it?
I'm like most people. No one really I knew had a Sega Saturn. It wasn't until years later that someone admitted that they had a Saturn to me, because it was all N64 or PlayStation, wasn't it? That's what we all had. And I think I hadn't heard of Panzer Dragoon maybe until the Xbox era. That's when I started seeing it kind of come through, because I think there was a game, was it Orta? No. Yeah. I remember that coming out, and that's when I first heard of the game. But I didn't realize that there were previous games on the Saturn, because it was never a console I looked into. It was never a console. Like, even when you go to the shows, if I saw Saturn boxes, my brain would immediately just kind of glaze over it, and I wouldn't even think, this is worth something. It wouldn't bother me. So it's only been recently. I mean, since I saw the brackets, I was like, oh. What, a Panzer Dragoon game is on the list? Okay, well, must be something about it then. And so it's only now that I've done looked at a few videos, spoken to a couple of people who I know are kind of Sega aficionados, who really, really like the game, and they've either got a copy or did play it when it was new. So I've kind of taken their opinion on it as well, because I think that's important. Because I it's hard for me to form an opinion for myself. And I mean, not to echo Arnie, but I think the big question is, how do you rate a game that very few people played, that is still currently incredibly difficult to play, and really is now a collector's holy grail for people to brag and boast about.
Right.
I don't think really that's it's a bit of a shame that a game this good has fallen into the clutches of collectors. It feels rather, well, it's a massive shame. I think that maybe one day Sega will find something, or the original developer, that Andromeda Group might find something. You have to hope, because was it on the Switch recently? We got the remake.
Yeah,
maybe
the original.
maybe
Yeah.
Well, and they're doing Zwei as well. They're doing the sequel.
Well, then
as
you never know. Maybe they might.
Um,
I mean, like Sega have done some funny things the last few years with remakes.
I mean, yeah, a ground up remake of Panzer Dragoon Saga would be
amazing.
insane. But if anybody's crazy enough to do it, it's probably Sega. I mean, they're great about keeping their old IPs alive.
Yeah. No, say this is something that I genuinely love about Sega. Sega are a game making company, and they've never let go of that very core fundamental of who Sega are, and that's where it's like you look at like your Konamis, etc., who've kind of lost their way. Sega, for all their crap games that they've released, they keep at it. So I also have a little bit of hope that they would also pick this up one day.
Well, the thing with Panzer Dragoon Saga, and I'm gonna start talking about it a little bit more, but it's I'm surprised that they haven't even at least tried to do a sequel to it. If you lost the source code to the original, at least you try to do some sort of sequel. But I think a ground up, I mean, we've seen it happen before, so you never know. But we'll push that toward the back end of this discussion. You know, let's circle back to that. You know, but as far as Panzer Dragoon Saga, man, there's certain things about it that you just can't, you know, like that just pull you in. Graphically, like I mentioned before, this was like a benchmark. It was a beautiful game, and still, considering early 32-bit games, still a great game to look at. It's still not terrible to look at.
Fully 3D environments, didn't cop out like those dang Final Fantasy games, you know?
Well, and I know, Arnie, we spoke about this yesterday in terms of like a lot of the NES, Super NES games, how they hold up well because you can make out what's happening.
Yeah.
I think this is another example of it. It may not be the prettiest game to look at now, but it's still a pretty damn good game technically that you can still play and see what's happening. And, you know, the soundtrack to this game, phenomenal. Not that this is a deciding factor and everything, but just considering,
hey, it's something.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful soundtrack, man. I think on the last episode you guys spoke about it. Like you could just sit back and listen to the soundtrack. You know, the battle system was really unique for the time, and the real time aspects of it were. It was something that hadn't really been done like that before. And one of my favorite things, everybody freaks out when they talk about real time combat, and especially you're on a dragon and you're flying in the air. But they did a really cool thing where they took the attack zone, almost like a map or a meter or something, would be in the center of the HUD on the bottom of the screen. And it was either red or green. Green was where you wanted to stay to attack. Red was where the enemy, if you were in the red, right? I thought that was such a cool, clever mechanic to put in there because you could strategically see that your enemy was trying to get you into that red area. Yeah. You know?
Like you could move around people. Like it was sort of like a sphere that you could position yourself around. Yeah. Honestly, that was my favorite thing about it when I was watching it and researching on it, is that they managed to take a rail shooter and translate that same sort of action into a turn-based RPG, which is crazy to me. Like that they were able to do that successfully.
You really have to see the videos to kind of comprehend it. It's a really, you can't. Yeah. It took a lot of imagination and ingenuity for them to be able to do that. Because for the life of me, if you explained that to me a month ago, I would have been like, a rail shooter that's an RPG where you can move around the enemy. It's like that does not. How does that even work?
Does not compute.
Rail shooters are just shooters. You shouldn't need to like put any strategy behind it.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite things about the game, and it made what could have been a very complex battle system very easy to get into and fun. You know, because you're there, you're fighting, people are coming from all different directions, and you're still able to keep track of everything somehow. I thought that was really clever, man.
I think the other thing that I really like about it, and I think Geoff will appreciate this, is that based on the research I did, it basically sounded like Sega came to Team Andromeda and was like, we need you to make a game that's gonna sell more than Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
Like, do that. And I can't imagine like being the guy in the room that's like, okay, right, I can do that.
Well, they that was the thing, right? They said that this was Sega's answer to Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah,
insane.
But I think this game was like a full Hollywood production though, and it had some great CG sequences. Yet the story was told through the in-game engine, so it did a really good job of meshing the two and not just completely taking you out of the gameplay and showing you this great CG sequence. You know, you were still in that game, and especially I think the first disc, I believe, is the one that has the most cutscenes. So once you get through that, well, I should bring that up too. There's a 4-disc game. This is a 4-disc game too. You know, so they put they crammed a lot of stuff into this game.
Yeah.
and it shows. I mean, if you're gonna do a 4-disc game, you want to see the fruits of it, you know.
But that's exactly what Final Fantasy VII was. It was like the final disc was pretty much the whole open world and everything in it, just minus all the FMVs. So it could pack a lot. So I think it was like a trick that everyone was learning off of each other.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Now this is a pretty short game considering. It's,
I think somebody said it was like 20-25 hours.
Yeah, it's 20-25 hours, but I've seen people say that they've beaten the game in 16 without doing any of the grinding, which is kind of a cool thing to know because you don't have to grind to actually beat this game.
That's nice.
But again, a very short game, but still, you know,
you gotta be good.
Yeah, you gotta love it for what it was. You know, it was just trying to be a showcase of a system that was sailing off into the sunset.
Yeah, it's really weird. Like something like, I know we have our criteria that we sort of structure around, but it's hard for me with Panzer Dragoon Saga. Like when I think about, oh, what's the legacy, or did this game like influence anything else? I'm almost certain that it had to have, right? Like, I'm sure the members of Team Andromeda, if nothing else, went on to work on other games. Yeah. Like, I'm sure there are seeds of this in other games. But I think that the problem is that the legacy really resides with the people who got to play it, right? Like, if you were lucky enough to have grown up and you had a Saturn, you know, in Japan, in Europe, or in America, and you got to play this game, I am 100% sure that it made an impact on you. Like, I have to believe that it was an experience at the time, the same way that it'd probably be an experience right now, because there is, like, that battle system, there's nothing like that I've seen.
Yeah.
But it's hard to sort of it's hard to quantify the impact of this game, at least for me, as opposed to something like a Half-Life.
But like the thing is that we were seeing so many things going on with the PlayStation at this point, PS1. You know, we had games like Parasite Eve and Grandia, which were considered cinematic experiences. But I think Panzer Dragoon Saga, you know, you got to put it right up there with the cinematic role playing games of the time.
Yeah, I think ultimately, I guess if there's one thing that I want to take away from this, it's that, like, undoubtedly Panzer Dragoon Saga is an amazing game.
Yes.
And I think the fact that, you know, like, I mean, we've said this a million times during the series, so it's really repetitive at this point, but like, this is 1998, man. Like, if you make a game that's this good in this year that people still remember it, like, you did something right.
Yeah. Everyone's a winner, Arnie. Everyone's a winner. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the thing is, like, we're like you said, it's this 22 years later. Whether you've played it or not, you've been able to see that this game still holds up, and we haven't seen a game like this since, in its scope of battle and everything. We haven't seen anything since, which is kind of crazy. I still can't get over that. That's the crazy part to me, that we just haven't seen.
Well, it really, I think, you know, there was clearly a drive for this development team to, like, shoot your shot, right? Like, if you're gonna try to beat Final Fantasy VII, like, go all out, make it, you know, do what you have to do, and they did. I mean, they clearly did, like, the most creative thing they could possibly think of, and it worked, man. It just sucks that it happened to be on the Saturn. But yeah, man, I think ultimately, I think we've summed it up as this is a sad case of too little, too late, right?
Yeah. Well, you know what? Like I think it's time. I think. Let's take a quick break and we'll come back and we'll just talk about We'll go over these games and all the points and see if we can come up with a clear-cut winner.
We'll really figure it out after this break, I'm sure. We'll yell at each other for a minute, throw a couple chairs, and we'll come back and tell people what we figured out.
All right, we'll be right back. Okay, everybody, and we are back, and this is it. This is the time to make some tough decisions right now. Something that we don't look forward to, but kind of look forward to, because we're just weird like that. So we're going to go over the criteria, and a little stressed out right now. Let's start with personal attachment, and I'm going to kick it off with you, Geoff. In terms of personal attachment, which game do you really feel?
Let me think. So a game never played, and I'm unlikely to play anytime soon. Versus a game that I played when it got released. Is it that British dry witticism? This is it. You're experiencing it right now. I'm gonna have to give my nod to Half-Life for personal attachment. It's hard to look. I do think knowing what I was playing back in 1998, what I was enjoying, if I had a Saturn with this game on, with Panzer Dragoon Saga on, I would have loved it. I think I've seen enough to make me know I would have really digged this. It would have been fucking cool. Yeah. And and that's where it's like it's a real, now I'm realizing more and more like what a gaming crime it is that this game has just become a collector's item and not a game that we can just enjoy.
Right. Yeah. What about you, Arnie?
Is coveting something a personal attachment? Like is wanting to like rip it from someone's cold dead hands personal attachment? Because if it is, like, Panzer Dragoon Saga is up there for me. But no, I mean, I have to agree with Geoff, in terms of personal attachment. Even though I came to Half-Life much later in life, I did eventually come to it. I was able to play it, I was playing it on the PS2, so not as it was originally envisioned, but I was able to play a controller in my hands, get somewhat of that experience. I think even if I had gone through the lengths of, playing Panzer Dragoon Saga on a emulator, I don't think it would have been the same. I wish that I was a smarter kid and I had bought a Sega Saturn and a copy of Panzer Dragoon Saga when I had the chance.
Or about 5 copies, just to make sure.
Yeah, exactly. Just for preservation's sake, I'd like to keep them all safe.
Full sealed, ready to go. Yeah,
exactly.
Brand
in
new,
my safety
sealed,
deposit box.
VG graded. Yeah,
that's right. So yeah, it's got to be Half-Life.
Yeah, So to me, I probably played these games at the same time, around the same time. Mm-hmm. By the time I got to Half-Life, and by the time I paid what I thought was way too much money for Panzer Dragoon at the time, back in 2002, 2001.
Jesus.
Yeah. I was a steal. Now you look at it, right? It's like a steal
I was gonna
back
say.
Then. I was like, no, I walked into Toys R Us. It was in the clearance bin. Yeah, okay. Get out of here. They didn't even have it in Toys R Us. Liars. Anyway. Personal attachment, though, man. So having played them at the same time, I have to say Half-Life. For the reasons you guys said, but not completely. What I mean is that like it was great to play these games at the same time, but I really wanted to play Half-Life. Yeah, I was so happy to finally get to play it because we talk about both these games. One of these games some of us will never get to play again. There was a time where we didn't think we were going to play Half-Life on a console. Because it was just such a PC game, but being able to finally play it was so cool. And Panzer Dragoon, it was a game that I wanted to get it, but it wasn't something at the time, especially, it wasn't something I was trying to play all the time.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, I got to go with Half-Life for sure.
Okay.
So critical reception, I mean, this is kind of, it's kind of a draw. You know, they both got critically received. But what do you guys personally think? Like, Arnie, like in terms, I mean, what can we really talk about here in terms of critical?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I like a lot of the games that we're talking about, right? It's 9s and 10s across the board. The sales numbers difference is like the size of the Grand Canyon and a half. Yeah. Like, there's no comparison. Half-Life, I think, is one of like the highest selling FPS games of all time. Panzer Dragoon didn't even break like 200,000 copies sold. But I think critically, you know, I think they both deserve the praise that they got. I just bemoan the fact that Panzer Dragoon didn't get a chance to really shine, because I think a lot of people, you know, I struggle. I sort of wonder to myself, like, if this had come out on PS1 or something, like, would this be something that we hold up to the heights of like a Final Fantasy VII or you know, like all of those great Square Enix RPGs that we saw during that time. So ultimately, critically, you got to give it to Half-Life just because those sales numbers are so insane, and it was just so widely out there. It's so well regarded this long after it's been released. People are still making mods for this thing. There's been remakes. There's been, you know, sequels and prequels and all the nonsense.
Yeah.
So for me, it's got to be Half-Life on that one. What
about you, Geoff?
Yeah, I think Half-Life edges it. For all the above reasons. And I think this is where I guess it's trying to level the playing field a bit, to be fair to what Panzer Dragoon Saga kind of found itself in. It's not that team's fault that the Saturn failed or that it was dying at that time. You know, a lot of end of console lifespan games do sell badly, like we said. You know, now, I mean, I remember when the last generation passed on, people were clamoring for those final Wii U titles. They were desperate because they just in that hope that they become a $1,000 game, because because it happens every single generation. It's going to be difficult to know exactly how well it would have done if it was on another console, or if Saturn was doing better in general. I can't say if it stands up against the RPGs that I have played on the PlayStation 1. I think that it's different enough for it to be like, for it to have made an impact no matter what console or PC engine it would have been running on. And that's where I think it's that sort of ethereal, or that mythical what if that exists around this game in general. I think as soon as you throw sales numbers in, there's only one winner. I don't think actually many games can compete from this year with Half-Life. It was just that it was that much of a phenomenal game in terms of the public praise and eyes that were on it. I think it is going to edge this one as well for me.
So let's go out to legacy and genre defining. I think this is a little bit more clear cut on this side, but Geoff, what do you go with this?
So I was thinking, I mean, Arnie kind of brought it up before the last break around the kind of the legacy that Panzer Dragoon has. And it was interesting to go through the videos of people who have done all the research. The amount of people that went on from that Andromeda team to make some utterly fantastic games for Sega, like soon after. You got people who moved on to Shenmue, people who moved on to Rez. And you can see Panzer Dragoon and Rez actually side by side. There's a lot of similarities, and the team that learned how to make a rail shooter really brought that to make Rez the fantastic game that it ended up being. So I think that the legacy in terms of what people took from it in terms of the development and what they took that experience and what it made afterwards, I think is incredibly high, incredibly strong. I think for Half-Life Legacy, like I said earlier, I think that it did have a massive impact on what people thought an FPS could and should do. I think that what Valve were able to do was set a benchmark that said, look, we can all make a game where we shoot people and where you shoot things. We can all do that. Look at not me and you, but developers can, right? But we're prepared to do something different. And what I think is utterly amazing about that group was they could have easily just copped out and given us a slightly improved version for Half-Life 2. But what they did to kind of make that game incredible was that same, I think, kind of that same core principle of doing something that people aren't expecting. And I think that people still, developers still haven't matched, in my mind, Half-Life 2 in a lot of ways. In terms of we could probably do a whole episode just on Half-Life 2, I guess. But so this is where I think like the legacy that Half-Life has made across the genre, across the gaming industry, it can't be. I think it can't be ignored.
You make a good point, because we're not talking about Half-Life 2 necessarily on here, but we can see how the mechanics from Half-Life 1 evolved.
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of that's a good point, really. What about you, Arnie?
No, I mean, I can't really add anything to what Geoff just said. This is, to me, probably where I would say, as weird as it sounds, I think this is where I have the hardest time picking, because obviously Half-Life's legacy is undeniable and it's, insane. But like the people from Team Andromeda have made some of my like favorite games to go back to, like Jet Set Radio, like Rez, like Shenmue. Like, these are really, really good like games. There is a culture there that clearly valued quality, and they went their own separate ways. Sadly, like, it didn't work out. They couldn't stay together, but you can still see like seeds of that team in some of Sega's other really big games of that time and beyond. I think ultimately I have to give it to Half-Life, because the legacy there is incredible, not just in its subsequent sequels, but as we've already discussed, in the FPS genre in general, in other developers who are inspired by Half-Life. Valve is now, one of the biggest game companies in the world. And I mean, obviously, as much as I like to make fun of the memes and whatnot, there is a reason so many people wanted Half-Life 3 in the first place, that it eventually became a meme. And it's because Half-Life 1 was great and Half-Life 2 was even better. So there's obviously a big legacy of quality there as well. So it's going to be Half-Life for me.
Right. Yeah, it is funny because I was on the fence about this one too. Geoff actually made some good points toward Team Andromeda with, where they've gone since the team is split up. But at the end of the day, the team split up. We see influences in some ways. We see where, but they didn't stay together. They didn't. They weren't able to make a sequel to it or anything like that. Yeah. And just because there's actually a Half-Life 2, you got to go with Half-Life on this one. Because you were able to see the influences of the first game transfer into the second game, and that's before you even start looking at other games. Other series and whatnot. Geoff brought up Halo earlier, storytelling wise. These are things you can trace back to Half-Life. So you got to go with Half-Life here.
Yeah, it's not always about who did it first, but who did it best, right?
I'm really trying to not be like the most pro Half-Life person in the world. I mean, obviously, I'm really thinking even Duke Nukem 3D did a semi-storyline driven FPS. So I'm just thinking if there's anyone shouting at us now about games that did it before Half-Life.
No, right? I think we all. Yeah. I mean, there have to be, right. There's always there. It's rarely the person who does it first is the one that gets remembered for it the most, right? But I think when you think of developers that have gone on from that, I think you could get a lot of them to sit down and tell you, yes, I played Half-Life. It was very inspirational to me. It sort of informed a lot of my own game design philosophy and how I see video games and how I want to make those experiences for players now.
Yeah, I mean, that's like I said it when we first started. Valve took a lot of the best parts of other games and tightened it up. And like you said, they weren't the first ones to do it, but they were the first ones to do all of it so tight in one package. You could find another game that had a great story, but how's the combat? Yeah. You could find a game that had great combat, but how's the story? This one did everything all in one. All right, and now we go on to head-to-head. I think this one's going to be the crazy one right now.
Yeah.
Head-to-head. So, Arnie, let's start with you. Head-to-head, man. How do you break these down?
I mean, to me, like the one I always say every episode I've been on here, it's like if I was a kid back in 1998, like putting myself back in that brain as much as I can, and I had two TVs in front of me, one of them had Half-Life, the other one had Panzer Dragoon Saga, I think I'd go Panzer Dragoon Saga, honestly. Like, it seems Half-Life did something really, really awesome, and it did it very well. But Panzer Dragoon Saga's uniqueness in, like, its storytelling, its gameplay, its overall, like, look and feel, I think would have made me want to, like, I would have gravitated more towards it. And even today, like, I really want to play Panzer Dragoon Saga. You know, and both of these games are amazing at what they did. I think Panzer Dragoon Saga edges out Half-Life for me personally in a head-to-head matchup as far as the game that I would most want to play and the game that I think looks the most fun, in terms of, you know, how important that game is, or if it's better than Half-Life in this particular setting. We'll figure that out in a few minutes, huh?
Yeah, we have to. Geoff.
Yeah, some interesting questions, huh? What if like today, if you were going to say, right, you've got these two games to play and I've got no problems in playing them, we need to also make sure we remember the fact that I haven't played one of them and not many have. I think that I would rather play Panzer today. I remember replaying Half-Life some years after it first came out, and it was janky. It was some bad controls. The shooting was pretty terrible. The enemies, if they had a gun, if they saw you, they'd hit you. There was no sort of like, it was just pretty much a 1-for-1 shot hit with the AI. And I remember being infuriated by that. I got infuriated a number of times. It wasn't the easiest of games, but it also wasn't the fairest of games at times. Some of the platforming was abysmal. Climbing ladders became annoying, and there's so many pointless deaths. Yes. So many.
Yes.
I think if I played it now, after an hour, I'd be done. And so that's where I think, like, me today, Panzer Dragoon, for sure I'd rather play it. And if you let me keep your copy, I'll be even happier. Yeah. So, you know, send it to me, whoever's listening and has a copy. I'd love to play it. As long as you don't mind me keeping hold of it for a while, then it's fine. But if I'm to go back, 14-year-old Geoff,
I think this head-to-head one is where the gamers in us really come out. You know, like, we got to play the game, right? I mean, even if you haven't played the game, you'd want to play the game, you know. Yeah. But yeah, I totally agree with both of you. This isn't a game that needs a patch. It doesn't need a mod. You can play the original version right now, still enjoy it. It's got to go with Panzer Dragoon. If I have to go back to 1998, that's a tough one to really think about. Just because I don't remember what I was doing in 2008, 1998. I don't know, man. But, I mean, just going back with the frame of mind that I have now, back then, of course, the whole story of Panzer Dragoon, the mechanics of it. Probably if we played it back then, we probably would have been so spoiled thinking, oh, we'll see this again in another game. But the fact that we haven't, and the game is still playable today, the controls are still tight, the battle system is great. This is an easy one for me. It's Panzer Dragoon Saga.
Nice win there.
Yeah. So now this is it, man. This is it, guys. It's almost like I feel like we almost need a break right now, but we can't. We gotta push on. We gotta push on.
We gotta do it.
So now we gotta make a choice, man. Who's gonna advance into the final four? And Arnie, go ahead, man. Where you headed with this?
I'm just gonna lean back and just let him.
You want me to come back to you? You want me to go back to Geoff? Do you need more time, Arnie? Because I figured Geoff just finished going over the head-to-head part.
No. I want to go first. That way, no matter what I do, I can't be held responsible for what happens. I like going first.
All right.
Yeah, man. It's it's the gamer in me wants to be the contrarian, right? I want to be like, Panzer Dragoon Saga, no problem, dude. Like, let's flip the tables and make everybody go crazy. And I think there is a strong contingent of people listening to this who are probably like, Panzer Dragoon, Panzer Dragoon, Panzer Dragoon. But it's so hard to argue when you're talking about the year 1998 to argue against Half-Life, just in terms of everything we've already talked about that's not worth going over again, right? Ultimately, I don't want to spend a ton of time on this. I am very sad that Panzer Dragoon didn't get the love that it deserved. I wish that I could be that guy that tried to save it, but my rational brain is telling me that it's got to be Half-Life, and so I'm going Half-Life on this one.
Yeah, when I was thinking about this competition yesterday, I thought there's no way that one game could top the other one. After going over everything, talking about everything, man.
Are you going to embrace the chaos, Anthony?
The thought bubble. I am going to embrace the chaos. I'm going Panzer Dragoon.
Oh.
Wow.
And now it's not just to be a Sega fanboy or anything like that, but it's just, as a gamer, this is the game I want to play.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is a game that has me more excited. I have the copy of it, so screw you guys. I'm good.
You're in a unique position too that you can go play it right now.
See, that's the thing. I can pop in. Like if I talk about it as of today, I can pop Panzer Dragoon in right now, play it smooth, like I mentioned before. I put in Half-Life, I'm gonna be struggling.
Yeah.
Back in '98, it would have been a toss up, but I didn't play these games until 2001. So I'm just gonna go with Panzer Dragoon Saga. I'm just gonna stop talking right now, just because I've made my choice. Get at me. What about you,
See
Geoff?
what Jeff's doing. Here we go.
So, wow, okay, I think it's the first time I've got a deciding vote in an episode, so this is fun.
Is that seat getting warm, Geoff?
Nice.
Is it
it's nice.
Does it feel temperatures rising?
So I've also been thinking, what's been my reasoning for my other votes in the other episodes, and what I'm about to say, or my logical thought process, am I going to go completely counter to what I did in the last episode? So I'm going to sound like a real hypocrite. And I think I've always tried to view it as when you take out all the chuff from either side. And what we think today, and we're talking 22 years later, we're talking about which are the best games from 1998. And you've got to look at it like, okay, Half-Life 2 was amazing, check. Panzer Dragoon Saga should have been remastered or remade, check. No one got, these are all afterthoughts. But like in that moment in time, what was going on in the gaming scene, and what game is fundamentally top of its genre, top of its grade, and what really deserves to be held up as an example of fantastic gaming from that year. And when you put all that into a big mixer and you look at the gooey black mess that you've got afterwards, it becomes impossible to decide. So I'm actually going to go for Half-Life. The reason is that I think when it really comes down to it, what I hold against Panzer Dragoon, and this is where I feel it deserves a separate award or something from this whole series. Panzer Dragoon Saga is one of those teams in sport that you say, if only this went for them, that it's like a whole sliding doors moment. And we've all got it with our sports teams where, if that player had scored that chance or had not been injured or all those what ifs, you think, what could they have achieved if they had that one break?
Yes, they could have been Leicester City.
They could have been Leicester City. Thank you for saying Leicester as well, not Leicester. Thank you. Well done. That's amazing, Leicester. Yeah. Indeed, and I think that's where Panzer Dragoon is. It's a massive what if, but Half-Life is the Yankees.
Yeah.
It's the It's the think of another American team that's done well. It's the Chicago Bulls. It's the Patriots. It did it. Right. It succeeded. It blew away the competition. It got all the numbers. It got 50 Game of the Year awards. It trounced everything that year. It trounced it all. Yeah. And it's a hard game to go back to today. Yeah. But it is such a high performer, and Panzer Dragoon is such a low performer that I can't give my vote to Panzer Dragoon. Yeah. You know what I mean by low performer. You know what I mean. It got the acclaim, but then it got forgotten, and it's only the collectors who kept it going.
Yeah, this is in the 90s. I was a big Knicks fan, so Panzer Dragoon Saga is the Knicks.
Yeah,
Half-Life's the Bulls. This is, but like no. I mean, valid points across the board. I mean, it's just that I've played both of them.
I think the Saturn was the Knicks, and Panzer Dragoon Saga was Patrick Ewing.
Ooh, yes. You know what? That might be right. He just should have dunked that ball. Should have dunked the
ball. I think you were about to say I'm the only one who's played both games, so screw you guys. I'm picking Panzer Dragoon. It goes
I said that earlier. No. No, but I just feel like since having played both games and being able to just pick it up right now, and I'm like that 1%. This is the only 1% I'm ever going to be a part of. This is just me saying, I play both games, but I think I'd just.
And I'm jealous.
I'd just rather play Panther.
That you can do that. I'm jealous, man. I wish I could.
Yeah,
I wish I could.
Yeah,
but dreams are dreams. Reality is where we are.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Another one bites the dust,
That's
as they say.
So long, Panzer Dragoon.
Probably the biggest what if of this tournament. But there you have it.
Yeah, I think it held up well, man. Did a good fight.
Yeah.
A good fight.
As I say, I think we should give it definitely some kind of, if there's a separate award that we can give to games that deserve, that everybody listening should try and play out of all the games.
Maybe a runner-up award or some sort.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Listen, if you can find a decent Saturn emulator, because they have been getting better with time. If you can find a decent one, you can find an ISO of Panzer Dragoon Saga, go play it. Go do it right now.
Yeah. Man, good one. This is a good one. Good discussion, guys.
Yeah.
Well done. I guess that's it for us, man. I think it's time to wrap this up.
That's it, man.
So Half-Life advances to the round of 4, the final 4, as they say in the Americas.
Final 4, baby.
The semifinals.
It's getting real.
So then, keep checking out the website, guys. Get at us on the Region Free Gamers podcast Instagram page, on Twitter. Arnie, you got all that stuff locked down.
Yeah. Instagram at Region Free Gamers Podcast, Twitter at Region Free Gamer. Check us out everywhere, man. I should make more accounts for us. We should have like a Venmo and a PayPal that you can send us money to, so we can buy Panzer Dragoon Sagas for everybody.
And it's an expense too. It's an expense.
Yeah, exactly. We'll write it off our taxes.
Thanks, Geoff. Thanks, Arnie.
Thanks, Ed.
We'll see you guys next time. We'll do better next time. See you then.
Yeah, we always do.
Peace.